The Rats by James Herbert, 1974. It's a horror novel. I picked it up during the holidays when my brother came to visit. We like to go and look for old video games, little books around the holidays. It's kind of like a little bro trip. And I've been getting more into horror novels. I read one on my vacation in November, and I was like, oh man, I should like keep my eye out for more of these and kind of see what's out there. And with a pull quote by Stephen King for this 40th anniversary edition of The Rats, I figured that was a good, seal of approval that I would enjoy it. When I first picked it up and started, like, before I read it, when I first picked it up and kind of did some research on the author, because I'd never heard of James Herbert, I realized this is part of a trilogy. And I was like, man, I don't know if I want to start another series. But after finishing it, I realized that you could probably go decent chunks without the following book. So I'm not too worried about it being a series if you just want to get the first one, The Rats. I think the second one's called Lair. I might be wrong, though. The basic premise is it's a horror novel where giant, super intelligent rats start terrorizing London. The book felt like a good punk rock album. It was quick. It was gnarly at times. The distortion and the blemishes of the time in some eras or areas, but it just felt like punk rock to me. It's a short read. It's a quick read. It did have a little bit of slowdown, but we'll get to that later. It takes place during post-World War II reconstruction. So it's in the 70s, but there's still a lot of areas described in the book of being like old bombed out areas from World War II. It doesn't hit you over the head with it like this is specifically from World War II, but just from its depictions and how the author was talking about these areas that these were, areas where London wasn't really concentrating on fixing at the time, so there's this juxtaposition of the scars of a world war and modern life moving forward with all the trappings of, the working class society of your day job and your life and everything. You can kind of feel the anxiety of that around. It's very interesting reading something because our experiences with World War II are different from areas that were bombed and were, wrecked from the war. You could feel like the anxiety of the post-war and even some of the stories of the characters. You could see like this live fast, die young kind of mentality in a few of the people that I kind of felt. And I was like, maybe that was just part of the society of, I don't know how young people felt then walking around and seeing, buildings that were still destroyed. If they felt like, hey, this could happen again, this is ever kind of looming, especially growing up in the 80s with how much of our media was so filled with like Cold War, nuclear war anxiety. I can kind of see that this post-war anxiety kind of lived very healthily in this book. The early chapters, like the book starts and those early chapters, you just kind of don't know who the main character is. Obviously, it's whoever's going to start surviving because you start to really get to feel and know these people and empathize with them. And they're all going through what we all go through. They're, in a job situation, in a new relationship. Sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. And then awful things happen to them. And this book is, like I said, it's gruesome in spots. I felt very, I've read horror before and I was like, man, I'm gonna read this. This is cool. I'm like, whatever. And then you get to some of these chapters and some of the stuff that happens to these people with the rats, and I was very like, oh man, this is going for it. This is a brutal book. It's savage in spots. Definitely doesn't hold back. It doesn't linger too long either. It's not like it relishes in the violence, but it's different. Like when you see a zombie movie, because this felt like very much like a zombie book, even though they're rats. They're not undead or anything, but just that whole idea of like you're seeing like a horde of, rats and they're eating somebody. Like in a movie, you're just like, oh, that person like can't get away. In the book or reading from the book, it's like, that person's backstory, what they're going through. You have like a glimpse of their life. So it's a lot more, impactful of their deaths. I think I put a note when I was reading around page like 29. It wasn't for pretty much reference, but that's when you discover like kind of who the main character is. around page 29, you start following Harris. You've been introduced to him a couple times in the book, but you realize like, oh, this is the main character. So I'm seeing other characters throughout what's happening with the rats, but this is the person that sort of you're supposed to be following. He's a teacher at the East End of London. He grew up in that area. It's kind of like a rougher area, but he likes the kids. He feels like drawn to it in a way, like he likes what he does. But then like the book really follows this really cool pace of like they're trying to figure out like society sort of coming to terms with these rat attacks, and those chapters of like who they're attacking. There's some great like halfway through the book. I don't want to spoil the two main, like we'll call them set pieces for you, like as an action movie. There's two back to back, and they're so good. They're about halfway through the book, and you just really enjoy it. And then the book kind of like slows down a little bit, and just kind of like my example of it's like a good, good kind of punk album or a good like hardcore album. It reminds me of like the early works of like where a band just like we got 7 good songs and then now we're gonna have like a weird track here or something. And the book I still enjoyed it, but I slowed down my pace of reading it. Once they start getting into the MacGuffin of the rats, like there's scientists are trying to figure them out and they're doing that. I felt like it wasn't as exciting. I kind of liked the outsider view of this horrible situation. They bring the science and like the bureaucrats and scientists kind of bring Harris in because he's the one X factor of these rat attacks that, he's lived through them. He knows kind of where they're coming from, the different areas. So he kind of gets brought in, and it's cool. It's interesting. I'm not saying it's terrible. I still enjoyed it a lot. I just felt like it's sort of just like it lost a little bit of that steam. It definitely starts to pick up again after that point. It starts to like kind of go with its roots of the beginning of chapters where you're kind of introduced to these characters. And who knows, maybe it would have worked out differently. But I'm just. My opinion, it kind of slowed down a little bit, but it was nothing to deter me from reading it. I still enjoyed it, especially once it started getting back to the roots of, meeting characters, and their inevitable demise. Final thoughts on the rats. There's some truly savage, violent moments in the book. Not for the squeamish, I suppose. I've been sort of getting more into horror, so... It was weird. It was like kind of like eating something spicy. We're like, I like spicy food now. I'm going to eat a little bit hotter. And then kind of, instead of going up one step, he went up a couple steps. But I also kind of enjoyed that too. It was definitely, kind of in the way I read books, just kind of jump into things. The hero stuff was kind of fine. It was good. But I think it worked best at what it was doing best, of introducing you to people, then having those chapters with Harris. And then it would have been interesting to see like how the end, like the hero portions, the end of the book, like the climax of the book would have been represented if Harris wasn't involved in it directly, but maybe as still an outsider of all this stuff kind of happening. But who knows? That's a different book, and I'm not the author, and I still really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm like nitpicking at this like one aspect, but no, it was good. It was the violence and the gore happens. Like I said earlier, the violence and the gore happens quickly. It doesn't linger too long. You definitely feel bad for the people. Like there were some chapters where I had put the book down and was just like, damn, like this is a good book. This is a heavy book too. So would I recommend this to everybody? If you're looking for something you're looking for a horror book that's quick, that's gnarly, that gets you in and out of the action quickly, that you're going to think about for a little bit of politics, not too much, of the era at least, then I definitely would recommend. I'm going to continue to read the series, but I don't feel like I need to pick up the second one right away. I think I'm going to give some time and maybe do a palate cleanse before I start reading another horror book. All right, until next time. Bye.